Hi there. We are in this amazing city of Dubai, which represents scale like nothing else. And we are here at the sidelines of Finacle Conclave 2019 to talk about what it means to take digital to scale. I've been fortunate to have with me over the next couple of days some of the thought leaders and some of our closest clients to talk to us about their vision and their initiatives to drive transformation across their respective enterprises. Today, I'm fortunate to be joined by Sankarson Banerjee, or Shanky as many of us know him, who's the Group CIO of RBL Bank. Thank you, Shanky, for joining us. Shanky, RBL Bank, not many know, has been a much older bank, but in a new avatar right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the vision of RBL Bank itself?
So RBL, Ratnakar Bank was the smallest scheduled bank in India, and RBL obviously had to carve out a niche and achieve its aim. We are growing at a 40% a quarter for the last few quarters. Even this quarter, we announced results of 40% growth. Our biggest challenge has been that our competitors, many of whom are much larger, are also quite forward and innovative, and so our challenge has been to do it a little bit better, to do it a little bit faster, to do it on a slightly better scale. And hopefully we have been successful at it so far. We have always been trying to see that we are a little bit ahead of the market, because the market in India is particularly dynamic.
So just picking on the last point that you mentioned about India being a dynamic market, it's also, I think, today being seen as one of the more progressive markets in terms of adoption of technology, in terms of helping regulation facilitate the adoption of technology, creating the right kind of competitive environment in the banking fraternity. What is probably not known to the public at large is that with the evolution of something like open banking, for example, your bank has been really one of the pioneers of doing some fairly path-breaking work in that area in India. Can you just share some of that with us?
So RBL identified quite quickly that it's impossible for us to expand using traditional physical means. It's very hard to set up enough branches and to grow at this rate. So we therefore focused on getting partnerships in place, and they would provide us with the physical presence, the expansion required on various fronts. Obviously, traditional savings accounts is one part, but we also do loans, we also do credit cards, we also do acquiring. Most of that is done through partnerships. And using these partnerships effectively meant building an API interface, so that you didn't constantly have to engineer for each individual partner. And that decision was taken fairly early on. Now, India as a whole also has evolved quite digitally. The UPI revolution has helped a lot. eKYC has helped a lot. And we've been therefore able to expand our partner network quite a bit, quite rapidly. So we provide the underlying banking services, financial services, risk management services, and they provide the outreach service. And that has been both a mindset change and a change in a technology approach. Mindset change was because banks traditionally used to be institutions, vertically scaled, vertically integrated. They always thought that if you have to bank with me, you have to be my customer. And RBL said, no, that is not the important part. You can be my customer without interacting with me. And similarly, products went through changes. I mean, banking software also used to be vertically integrated. So we had to work with various providers. Obviously, a large part of our work was with Finacle to open up these transactions so that an outside party could initiate them. And we had to find a security model that was good for us. We went through various iterations of it. We are hopefully now on generation 4 of it.
In terms of your own personal role, I think unlike many of your peer CIOs in different banks, you've actually come from outside the industry. And therefore, you probably have the benefit of looking at the banking industry from a slightly different lens compared to many other CIOs who've sort of grown through the banking industry. What's your perspective of the way banks are progressing in terms of leveraging technology, and what is that the banking industry needs to be doing a lot more?
So, as I keep saying, I have worked a lot with banks. This is the first time I'm working for a bank. And my background has been quite varied: retail, e-commerce, traditional consulting. The one thing that I do think banks do very well is they do very good risk management. They do much better on transactional controls than most other industries do. What they are now grappling with is that the fact that they've had to open up their boundaries and scale per transaction at a much higher level. Earlier, because banks were institutions, they could offer a particular per transaction and that was it. I mean, their customers would take it and adopt to it. Whereas e-commerce traditionally has had per transaction rates that are 100 or 1,000 times, or in Alibaba's case, probably 100,000 times more than the traditional banks. And as our fintech evolves, our fintech expects us to be e-commerce speed. And that is a challenge that banks have to face. We don't quite know how to transform ourselves. We know, but we don't know. We are learning all the pitfalls. The second is that banks still, even today, are still tied to the concept of a branch. It's quite embedded into a banking system and you come across it in unexpected ways. I mean, we still have EOD, BOD, even though banks don't close. UPI is a 24/7 system. Many of our other systems are 24/7, but we still have an end-of-day concept. We still have closing hours as part of many of our setups. These things are a little bit hard to dig out and re-engineer. And part of that is the process of transformation into an electronic bank. Banking as a service and not bank as an institution. A service doesn't shut. An institution, obviously, it shuts down when the people are going to go home. So those changes, and I've seen these changes happen in capital markets as well. Capital markets, similarly, stock exchanges used to be institutions. And then eventually they started opening up and they started becoming entirely digital. And to the point where now most stock exchanges are entirely digital, like not a single person running the actual market. So, and they had to go through a similar kind of transformation. They had to increase algorithmic trading, shot their transaction rates up to sky high limits. They had to learn how to manage everything without an end of day batch, because there was no end of day. Commodity trading, forex trading happens 24/7 in some market or the other. So these are challenges that banking is starting to face, and I can see that challenge being faced very effectively by some banks and not so effectively by some banks. And I think that's what's going to define who are losers and winners.
Just changing tack away from technology per se and looking at what some people call the softer element of the transformation, which is the people angle. Given the repositioning of RBL Bank as a new age, young, progressive bank, and we look at the people in your organization and the kind of excitement that they probably have in terms of leveraging technology to truly make a difference. Just give us an insight into where and how you think the people angle plays a role in the great work that RBL Bank is doing today?
So, people play a very big role. You see, we are trying to do new things. It requires a particular mindset to try that experiment. Now, internally, we did our own internal IT workshop, and our 5-year goal is to be the world's best bank IT. And India traditionally has said we will be fast followers. What we are trying to do is become global leaders to this. And ironically, India is already quite far ahead globally also in the banking, in the digital banking journey. We are in fact some of the most digitally banked countries in the world because of UPI, because of eKYC, because of an enabling framework that has been around for a while. And of course, India is heavily mobile centric, heavily internet centric. So we feel that we do have the chance to become the world's best bank IT. And that mindset, it's both an internal journey to say we are going to stop being fast followers and be actual leaders. Luckily, RBL Bank has been leaders at different points of time. We've been followers as well as leaders. Now we are trying to take on even more. See, we are taking technology risk without taking business risk. We want to be at the cutting edge. Now we're saying bleeding edge of technology, but we can't at the same time afford a failure, because the bank is also starting getting bigger and bigger and the cost of failure is starting to get higher and higher. So at the same time as we're getting to bleeding edge, we are also getting to more reliable, better managed, better better at managing disasters, better at managing transactions. So we have to do both at the same time. You have to be more agile and more cutting edge as well as being more reliable. And that's a challenge that we are, again, it's a bit of a mind shift because earlier it used to be you can either be slow and reliable or fast and innovative. And now we are saying we'll be both. We'll be fast and reliable. So that's the mind shift we are in the process of going through. And it's a very exciting shift because frankly, even I haven't done it. E-commerce was fast and unreliable and then it became reliable. Whereas banks, the reliability part can't be given up even for a day.
No, sure. I think that's great to hear because I think a lot of people say that this is probably the more exciting part of the change rather than just the introduction of new technology. Just one final point, we at Finacle feel that we are very fortunate to have been associated with your bank, given the pioneering work that you've been doing. Do you want to just reflect on what you've seen by way of a relationship between RBL Bank and Finacle and Infosys, but more importantly, given all the changes that you see coming in the next few years, particularly with your aspiration of being the best bank IT in the few years, what is your expectation of us?
So one dramatically good thing about our relationship with Finacle is, we were a tiny bank when we took Finacle, but the relationship has always been of a very high quality. We've always got the attention that whenever we needed attention, we got attention. We got the same level of attention as banks 100 times our size. And that's been a great experience for us. Of course, we've done interesting things. We've taken Finacle in areas where normally other banks have not, and we want to continue doing that. But the fact is, we have never been treated like a small bank and therefore a side experiment. We've always gotten the attention and the partnership that we required. And that has been a great experience. In the case of, we are also trying to participate quite deeply in the next evolution of Finacle. We feel that our demands and the demands of some other banks are going to drive how the new architecture is. And we've been talking to your engineering team, we've been talking to the products team on how to get these concretized and how to get these into timelines that are shorter than you are normally used to. How to get these from our own legacy to this to the modern world. It's not just enough to put it in the newest version. It's also how do we get to that version. So those challenges are what we see in the future. In the next 5 years, I think we'll do a lot of this. We'll use the absolute latest and greatest, as well as do these jumps where we go from a relatively old version all the way to the newest version.
Absolutely. And I think, like we often tell our people within the Finacle organization, it is really banks like you that help us become better. So I think we really value the partnership with you. Thank you very much, Shanky, for your time today.
Thank you, Sanat.
So many of you who've not necessarily followed banks in India, you may not have really heard of RBL Bank. But given all the great work that Shanky and his team are doing, I'd urge you to follow this bank because it's going to really make a difference. It's already creating waves in the Indian banking market, and I dare say very soon their achievements and what they're trying to do by way of transformation is going to be heard elsewhere. Thank you for your time for watching.